Hello again. Welcome to this eighth episode of the Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness podcast. My name's David, and today we've got another treat for you. I have an interview with another member of one of our groups. A more recent member from the United States, New Jersey, I believe, is Katie Brunner. So she's going to be joining us soon by the interview telephone link, and I hope you'll enjoy that. Before that, just time for a couple of contacts that I've had with people who have messaged in or written in via emails, via Twitter and so on. I had a couple of ladies, I won't name everybody's names, a couple of ladies that had messaged in from the United States, both saying that they I think one of them had a car wreck, a car crash, and been whiplashed and had been concussed. Didn't actually lose consciousness, but then ended up with secondary injuries, and as a result, in the years since, had developed fibromyalgia too, and some other kind of complex visual problems. And the other lady that contacted had been in as a passenger on a bus that had crashed and ended up smacking her head. Again, having similar long-term chronic pain problems. And both of these ladies said just from one concussion, they've been left kind of, unable to live their normal lives and with a great deal of chronic pain. They've both since found alternative clinics and clinicians as well working with chronic pain. Have treated them with cream and also with oral doses of ketamine in order to help them with the chronic pain. So, that's really good that that's available kind of on insurance and through normal, kind of pain doctors and specialists without too much hassle. And it's obviously administered correctly and given correctly. And they said they had a great deal of pain relief from that, and can't see why it shouldn't be, its use shouldn't be expanded. After having both of them had opiates. I think one was on morphine and the other was on dihydrocodeine and tramadol, I think, which sounds like a really nasty cocktail to me. But anyway, they were just kind of singing the praises of alternative treatment. There are alternative drugs out there, but ones, as I said, have been looked at as kind of street drugs before, or other types of drugs, because of the potential for recreational misuse. Okay, so thank you both for getting in touch. One more message is from a gentleman in Scotland. He's going through his fifth concussion as a sportsman, not professional, but he's having to kind of hang up his helmet, his cycling career, kind of like sports career at the moment. And it seems he's had real difficulty. He's had to move twice, and he's had to leave his job after taking less responsibility. So he's really struggled here in the UK with PCS, and his name's Paul, and Paul's also asking a question: has anybody else successfully claimed through tribunal in the UK against an employer, saying that one of his concussions was at work, and he's interested to know. So if anybody can let us know, if you can either message me or I can pass details on to Paul. I think he wants to talk discreetly with somebody, so I won't go into any further details right now. Okay, so without further ado now, we're going to go on, and here's the interview which I've recorded earlier with Katie. Enjoy. Right, okay, so I'm here, joined today from, is it New Jersey?
It is New Jersey, yes.
By Katie Brunner. She's a member of one of some of our Facebook groups, and Katie's kindly agreed to come and talk to us about how post-concussion syndrome has affected her life, and how she's gone on her journey, and what she's up to now as well. So, hello, Katie.
Hello.
Hi.
Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, if it's as cold over there as it is over here. It's pretty
Yes,
freezing.
it's a bit, well, it's not below freezing, but it's certainly freezing. The wind chill,
Right.
they're saying, is very cold. It's bitter.
Really
It gets
cold.
to the bones.
Yeah. Well, I think we had in Scotland here, it was -8 in one place. So,
Ooh,
yeah.
no, not that bad.
Yeah, no, so
20s,
that's,
20s here.
yeah, that's why they've got all that whiskey up there to keep warm, I think. Um, right, so okay, so Katie, so when did you first find out about the Post Concussion Syndrome awareness groups on Facebook, or did you
Actually,
join by mistake or accident, or?
well, I've been on Facebook for a while, pretty much since it had opened,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was looking for support groups at the time, mainly because the loneliness
Hmm.
is such a big thing of post concussion syndrome. We
Uh-huh.
really didn't have many support groups up here at the time,
Right.
and I was, I guess, looking for an understanding of what I had. My doctors were very vague
Yeah,
with my description,
that's common.
and I also had, even nurses were telling me the reason why it's so vague is because, well, truth be known, is there wasn't much understanding about it, but in general, traumatic brain injury is such a vague
Hmm.
um, description as well, because there's a lot to it. Every brain is a snowflake, so whatever is triggered is triggered. You don't really know how exactly it all works. So
Well, yeah,
um,
that's the official
I
line, isn't it?
yeah, right. It's people
Yeah.
say we're not, our brains are not snowflakes, but they are, and they're actually finding that, I think it's even people with dyslexia and ADD, they have like different shape to the brain.
Of
So
course, yeah.
I'm the type of person in general that if I don't understand something, I do try to find information about
Excellent.
it
Yeah,
as I
yeah.
possibly could. So I went on Facebook and I was just looking at different communities, and this was the first one that popped up.
Yeah, God help you. Right, so yeah, and then there is this because what you've just mentioned is a really important point, and I have touched on it in some of the podcasts. I mean, if you've got no life, you could probably sit and listen to them all. But and a few places have touched on this about the fact that the medical healthcare system, allopathic system as it's called, they
Hmm.
don't have any education on either mild traumatic brain injury. They've got the basic stuff like the Glasgow Coma Scale, and they've got one or two scanners, but they don't have any education on it because they kind of seem to think, oh, it's not required. And it's the same
Right.
here in the UK. Whereas, yeah, you can look at the brain through like a DTI, like a diffusion tensor imaging scanner, and you can see the axonal damage and things as well. And I remember going back to years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, there's books by world-leading experts out there, and all these neurologists and doctors need to do is, like I did, I ordered them off Amazon, picked them up and
Hmm.
read them. So the information is there. I think,
Right.
yeah, I think I don't know, what do you think? Is it, did you get the feeling that they were just kind of like, don't bother me, I know best, or what did you feel?
No, well, some of them, because I had about 8 different doctors.
Wow.
I,
Jeez.
when I tell you, me and my family, we were really trying to find the root of these things, and
Mm,
there's some doctors I had just dropped because
yeah.
they just didn't have the time. A lot of,
Oh, okay.
especially here in the U.S., you go, you make an appointment, or at least back when this happened. Now, this happened to me about like 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So we, we're struggling. I mean, we're always going to be struggling with our healthcare system.
Mm,
But, trying to get a doctor to see you in 3 months was, the struggle. And, then my primary doctor, my normal ear, nose, and throat was like, you need to find somebody as soon as possible, because with the brain, there's that 3-month time that you need that healing, the proper healing. Otherwise, it can get stunted. It could, stop healing. At least that was the thought back then. I'm not really too sure, like now, what the idea is, but I was only able to actually get a neurologist about 3.5 months after everything had happened. Or rather, I did see a neurologist about a month into it, but then he said, oh, you can rest a bit, and then we'll get you into some physical therapy and things, and pain management. And that wasn't great. We did a regular CAT scan, and we did an MRI, and nothing really showed up.
It won't do. No, it won't.
I'm sorry?
It won't show up. That's a common mistake, is it?
Right.
Those 2 scans are just to rule out anything more serious.
Nothing. So
no, they're just trying to make sure and cover their own backs as well, you see. So.
Well, they also want to be sure that you didn't have a brain aneurysm.
Of course, yeah, which is more, terrible.
They want to be sure that there's no black spots. I personally know somebody who does have black spots on their brain, from their car accident, so bad, I can understand how important that is. And then there's always the possibility that you can, they don't say this, and no doctor has full out said this, but you don't know within that 3-month time that you can have an aneurysm from an impact,
That's true,
but at least I've heard it's happened to some people that I know within that time. So, that's why they keep up with the MRIs and, that to see if it had happened. And they don't know if it happens during the time of the impact or within that. There's weak blood vessels, I believe they call them.
Yeah, I've read and seen from Michael A. McCrea, who's probably the world's leading expert in PCS, that, you need, if you do have CT and MRI, they should be immediately after the accident. And you're saying you had a period of 3 months. That is crucial, because in that 3 months following a concussion, those 4 or 5% of us that do go on to get PCS, that is a point where it's make or break, in my opinion. So either you can heal a concussion in the first few weeks, in the first 2-3 months, or you can. What a lot of doctors now are telling patients, as soon as they get a concussion, they go to see the doctor or the emergency room. They tell them straight away that they've got post concussion syndrome.
Right.
And it's just wrong. That's like kind of saying, if somebody, they find a tumour in somebody, that's like straight away telling them, you're going to die of cancer.
Right.
Kind of like the placebo, kind of nocebo effect. It's like, whoa. I mean, that's in my opinion, that's just totally wrong.
Yeah, I know that they have to, because technically it is post-concussion, and you have,
that's...
all of the signs of it, but, I guess they have to say it, because but they also, the doctors that I were around, they basically said, oh, it's just PCS, no big deal, you'll get over it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's wrong. In my opinion, that's wrong, and from what I know medically, that's wrong as well, because maybe they're saying that because of your medical insurance system that you have there, and the fact that it's backed up, and you have to have that, but here we look at it differently, because if a normal, say a sportsman or somebody, a healthy person has a concussion, they might recover in 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And therefore, that's no longer, that's quite normal. That's about 96% of us, people, not us, not you and me. But, once the brain's found a way to recover, that's great. So that can't be post-concussion syndrome, that's just concussion. So what they're actually telling people in the States, you're saying, is that as soon as they've had a concussion, as soon as they've been looked at, they're telling them they've got post-concussion syndrome.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
this is something I've
but
suspected for a
their
long while.
assumption is that it's done in
That's
like a couple of
whoa.
weeks or maybe
Thank you.
even a month, and then the longer it goes, they were scratching their heads. But
Right.
again, remember, this was about 9 years ago. I'm really
As well,
unsure if
yeah.
things have really
I
changed.
don't think they have, but thank you. You've actually confirmed something that I've wondered about for quite a while, and I've asked quite a few people, and I've not got a clear answer of what's actually going on inside the American healthcare system. Because I do a lot of interviews and have in the past with healthcare professionals, but they always want to remain anonymous, generally,
Yeah,
for obvious reasons. Especially here,
yeah,
where the government and corporations have kind of privately run our healthcare system, but they say it's public, but it's not. It's 90% private. So there's a lot of control from the mainly just drug companies.
well, a
Mm.
lot of yeah, and it's it's a bit it's a cluster because there's only certain doctors that will
Mm.
take your insurance. So
Right.
and
Okay.
then of course like the insurances have to confirm with each other whether or not they'll allow like a certain amount of physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that's the case, then the doctor can either deny you or accept you on their own. Like I'll admit to
Right.
you though,
Yeah.
like I have had doctors that, once they find out my insurance had not, gone through, they completely just dropped me and, oh, here, by the way, here's the bill. And then
Whoa.
there's somewhere,
That's
you
scandalous.
know, yeah, but then there was some. I've had a few doctors that they saw my insurance was like, nope, we're gonna not give anything more, to you
Mm.
guys. We're not going to allow any more physical therapy. And there was doctors who were like, you know what? I just don't care. I want to see you get through this.
And
And
yeah, well, that's much
if you
better.
wanna hand over some money, you can. If not, I've had doctors who have
Wow.
gone pro bono where they were just
Yeah.
like, I would rather see you happy than in pain.
Oh,
Struggling. I had
that's.
this fantastic eye
Oh.
doctor who I at first when my first neuro eye doctor looked at my eyes, he was worried. He said, "Yeah, you're probably gonna go blind in
Holy moly!
a couple, maybe like 10, 15 years. We
What?
have to get you through something. I don't know what to
Jeez.
do." Basically, it was his answer. That's not my
Wow.
place. I just tell you what your diagnostics are. But I found a doctor actually through a nurse through a different doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and she sat down. I was able to do this, and this neuro eye doctor who does physical therapy, heart charts, all of those, and she even invented some stuff, which is really, really neat stuff.
Mm.
She works with mostly stroke victims.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
she applied some of her ideas with stroke victims to
Mm.
me, and
Yeah.
she's like, I don't care. I told, like, my insurance was like, nope, no more of that. So
Mm.
that's enough for Katie. And she was like, no, we've shown some progress. I
Yeah.
think we can go further. So she wanted me to go further. And she says, now my eyes are the eyes of a 20-year-old, and here I am, 35. So
You're
I
looking
have
to the
younger
past.
eyes than myself.
Wow. That's yeah. Well, that's got to be good.
Yeah.
Well, so wow. Already, yeah. Just by talking to you, everybody I've spoken to, you guys have such a different aspect, such a different perspective on things. But you're saying, yeah, there were some doctors who were just like, oh, well, your money's run out, see you, bye,
Bye.
shut the door on your way out. And then there's other ones that are kind of deeply concerned. Now, there is something like, I don't know if you've heard of doctors and nurses take the Hippocratic Oath
I know.
when they do, and they're supposed to say, well, first I will do no harm to anybody and so on. And it's got a whole ethic of how they should be. And I think
I know.
these days it's refreshing to know that some of them said that I'll take you pro bono, for and do that too. I don't know if you know my story anyway. I don't know if you've. I was injured in August 2006, and I tried we have a health system here where you pay for it all your life. You pay for it through an insurance policy, through the taxes and everything else. So we do still pay for it. Anybody that says it's completely free it's nonsense. But it's free at the it's free at supposed to be free at the point of usage, right? But if you get there and you have a problem, they quite often, depending on where you live, they won't let you see anybody. So, do you know how long I asked to see a neurologist for? Through 9 years. Didn't get to see him. I didn't see anybody, not one single specialist. I saw a couple of GPs. The GPs were just loading me up on drugs. At one point, I was on 10 prescriptions. But the kind of difference hearing you speak, because I can hear from the shock in your voice. You didn't know that had happened to me.
I can't talk. Yeah.
But I kind of lost my house. I lost my job. I lost all my money. Everything went for me, and I ended up homeless 3 times. And then that's partly what led to me starting the groups in the first place. As 2 friends of mine died, 2 dear friends of mine died, who also had chronic illness, and they were killed by medications. So after following the death of the first one of those, he actually died right in front of me. I thought, this is really serious now. I need to do something, what I can do, and that's when it all started. So I kind of. I think, we've all had very different journeys. And I had
made a movement.
I had to learn to heal myself. Because years before, I'd learned like Reiki healing and energy healing and the science of that as well and different stuff. And so I kind of incorporated all that into it, and then eventually got just on a natural way of healing. But it's fascinating to hear. So was there a point then, through the treatments, you said the lady who dealt with strokes generally, she helped you quite a bit. Was that the end of that, or did you manage to gain more improvement?
I had taken several physical therapies. I had done it in one hospital, and then, I'm sure you've heard of Kessler Hospital.
Oh, yeah.
They were okay. It's just the problem is that by the time I got into physical therapy for my vestibular impairments, it was a bit late. So, we got far, but then I plateaued entirely. And that was it. Yeah. My brain was like, okay, so this is your limit, or so I thought at the time, at least with the physical therapy that they had given me. That was it, and I had tried, and they were both like, I don't know what to do for you, but this is where you are now, so I didn't know what else to do, but then, again, nurses. I owe my entire existence now to a few doctors out of 8, doctors, and maybe about 10 or 12 nurses. I got so much more help for them than anybody, but one of the nurses was like, actually a couple, like 3 or 4 were like, yoga, like, Katie, get into yoga again, because muscle memory certainly has a big impact with, traumatic brain injury. Just because, your consciousness doesn't remember how to do things doesn't mean that your unconsciousness doesn't know how to do things.
The body mind.
I did, actually it was a lot of my muscle memory that brought back a lot of things that I thought I couldn't do. My psychologist, she was fantastic. Again, another doctor who took me pro bono, didn't have to, but did. And, she was another one. I had forgotten how to do all things art. Art was a big part of my life growing up, everything. I was a photographer. She had told me, just start sketching. I was mad about that. I had went to Rutgers University. I had graduated with a bachelor's of fine arts.
Wow,
why are you telling me to go back to sketching?
Go back to basics, almost.
Yeah, but I did. I went back to the basics. There were some things that I was able to pick up again, like drawing, painting, sculpting. Photography has a lot more mathematics involved with them, so no, I was never able to pick up photography again, but
No. Right.
which was my profession, you
Yeah.
know, and which was, you know, talking about mourning. Oh my gosh, I thought that that was art, you know, for the longest time, but I had, you know, I picked up yoga, muscle memory. I had taken yoga when I was younger. I was in acrobatics, and I had a teacher that had us do about like 15 minutes of yoga before class. And then I realized that I preferred the yoga over acrobatics. So
fantastic. Why not?
I had done it. Yeah, I was maybe like 12, 13 years old when I was doing acrobatics, and then I was on and off, more off in my life with yoga, and then the car accident happened. These nurses suggested to go back to it, and you know, it was frustrating in the beginning because, you know, I'd go onto YouTube and some of these, you know, yoga instructors on YouTube are doing crazy things, but I went and I
contortionists.
I typed in yoga for injuries or you know, restorative yoga, you know, well, I didn't call it restorative, I was like easy yoga, basic yoga, and I came across this, I don't have her permission to do this, but I'm sure you could find her on YouTube, Yoga with Cassandra.
Cassandra,
It's Kassandra, I think.
Okay,
I think.
All right.
Definitely check it out, but she has several different types of videos for different types of injuries, and there wasn't brain injury, but she herself had hip and knee injury. You know, for chronic fatigue, like, you know, you feel the pain in your bones, in your joints.
Oh yeah,
you know,
you
so.
do, yeah.
You know, my spine, my shoulders, like everything. So I started following her, and what I really liked about her was, you know, she's not too foo-foo, you know, you know, she's more about the physical aspects of yoga.
Technical enough, yeah.
And that's exactly what I was looking for. I started not taking her classes, they're free, you know, they're on YouTube. And I actually wrote a letter recently telling her that they changed my life. Following her different videos changed my entire life because I was able to get off of the couch. You know, my doctors were basically saying, no, you'll be on the couch for the rest of your life, so, you know, good luck with that. And the nurses really pushed me to do yoga. And like I said, yoga has obviously changed my life. I went back, I started doing yoga every day. And then I was very concerned. You know, it's very difficult for me to pick up new things, to relearn things. But one day I'm on my computer and I'm watching, you know, Cassandra, just seeing if I could be able to do certain things. And an ad came up for this yoga studio near me that was offering yoga training, 200 hour. And I looked at it and turned to my husband and I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I think I want to be a yoga teacher. Give it a go.
Well, yeah, Google is good for something sometimes with these adverts.
It's a great tool. You know, much like some medication that works with your body, and meditation and yoga. You know, these
together,
things are tools.
Yeah, together though is how intentionally powerful they are. My parents took me and my brothers to learn to meditate when I think I was about 8 years old, 8.5. And they gave me a mantra, and I was walking around the room, and that stayed with me. Luckily, that's oddly you mentioning yoga. I've never really. I must make a confession. I've never really ever been one for yoga. I just can't get the grip, you know, kind of my head around it. But
Yeah.
I learned to meditate, so I've always been a meditator since then, and through my teenage years and growing up were difficult times for me. So when I got back into those years, I learned to meditate, and then when I had my first concussions, I then found, and especially when everything got kind of tipped upside down, my whole life, I found that meditation was probably one of the one things that saved me from just absolutely losing it and not being here anymore, if you like.
Yeah.
So, but as I learned to understand that actually, yoga essentially and traditionally was the preparation for your body to be able to sit and meditate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always kind of find it, although I've never kind of got onto yoga, I prefer different types of exercise and things to keep me flexible. But I always kind of thought it a bit odd that some people just did yoga but never ever meditated. It's like making a sandwich
go
without
hand
the
in
bread.
hand.
It's like making
Yeah.
a sandwich without the bread, basically. It's like what? So,
Yeah.
but I'm glad it
A
helped
lot
you
of
so much. Anyway,
Well,
that's an
some
inspiring
people
story.
find meditation in doing the asana. Like I've talked about that in class too. Because originally I didn't meditate when I've always meditated my life. I'm Catholic myself, so
Okay.
I've been doing Italian Catholic from New Jersey. Yep, the stereotype. And my family always taught me the rosary. I really, my sisters not so much. I mean, yes, they did the rosary, but I was the weird kid that did walk around with rosary around their wrist, and I
Yeah.
actually did say them. And
Mm.
yes, it is a prayer, but it is a mantra.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
whether they're words, seed words, or whether they're words, when you're doing the beads, much like mala beads, when you're
Yeah,
repeating
that's right.
yourself,
In
even if you're doing
Buddhism,
one,
yeah.
2, 3, 4,
Hmm.
it has a major impact on the brain.
Massively, yeah.
It changes where the neurons go. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand that until I was
Well,
in yoga,
it's
that actually I've been doing meditation all of my life in rosary beads form, and
oh
now
yeah. Ancient
I focus
methods
most
of
of my
healing.
meditation. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, no, I'm just saying that these are ancient methods of healing which are embedded in modern day religions like Buddhism, Catholicism. They've all got, a deep hidden, and some of these have been kind of like, kind of shushed up and kind of like discouraged. But it's the same, all the mantras I learnt were in Sanskrit. And
Yeah.
there's a wonderful book if anybody's interested in healing as well. This is just a general shout out. I'm not sure how widely available it is now. A gentleman called Thomas Ashley Farrand, and it's called Healing Mantras. And you get a CD with this book. So on the CD, he takes you through and all the mantras for all these different issues and healing and issues in your life and problems and things. And the way he does the mantras, he's like, whoa, this guy's got some power to it. I had this book for years and years and years, and I keep pulling it out. And but there's some mantras that are really, really, when you chant them, you come into almost like a hypnotic state, like a trance state, and then
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
kind of like you're allowing the healing energy in.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think the best thing that was said to me about, especially mantras in general, even if they're just seed words, I tend to focus more on seed words,
yeah,
sata nama, things like that, Rama, Dasa, mainly because my teacher, and this really stuck with me, mainly probably because I love music so much. It's always resonated with me since I was
yeah.
like a kid.
Uh-huh.
I can't sing for the life of me, but
Me
it's
neither. No.
my singing. It's my sound.
Yeah.
But my teacher had said that all we really are tuning forks.
Yeah.
So
Receptors. Yeah.
the
That's
most
true.
powerful energy that we can actually make is the energy in which we make within ourselves, maybe like doing mantra, singing basically,
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
and allowing it to resonate up through the throat to the top of the head, having the tongue hit the top palate of the head,
The
let
higher
it
line,
go
yeah.
to the hypothalamus,
That's
and
it.
once it hits that hypothalamus, it changes things as far as like chemicals are concerned. So
Absolutely.
really
Wow.
neat
Yeah.
sciences behind, mantra. A lot of people think that mantra, yes, it can have, like anything in the world, it can have a spiritual aspect to it, but there is an actual science
Of
behind seed
course.
words in particular, that we're basically just tuning forks that can change things. Sure.
Absolutely, absolutely right. That Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything's made of that. And so the scientific side of it is the side I prefer. I don't, from what I do, my background, I like to be able to explain to people, they go, oh, it's just hooky kooky, there's no evidence. I go, well, actually, there's plenty of evidence. If you've got time, I'll sit and tell you all
Yeah.
about it. Like your brain works with billions of particles of magnetite in your brain. Magnetite is a crystal, like a metallic type of crystal. And this magnetite is what they also believe that can cause birds and butterflies to be able to migrate and bats to navigate as well.
Yeah.
We also have this in our brains, which are probably a bit more developed than most bats or butterflies. And so it can explain everything from the healing, the belief of healing that can heal you, the placebo effect, and also things like telepathy and, psychic ESP and things. So I know we're getting a little bit off subject here, but
Yes.
don't let me stray too far because I'll go on all day. But yeah, going back to the healing and the healing sounds, there's a lot to be said for that. And I think in the new kind of paradigm of healing and medicine that's got to come out of these next few years, it's got to, because we can't go on being slaves to drug companies.
From what I've heard, at least here in America, I've noticed, because I still keep in contact. I had actually met some people, just being in the office, waiting to see doctors, or even through other groups that I have been in, people that I actually know in my personal life that I've actually met through yoga, actually. They have told me, it sounds like things have changed a bit since 9 years ago, at least in the medical field. A lot of these doctors here are suggesting, at least physical therapy wise, yoga, mainly
good.
because restorative yoga in particular can help those people with chronic pain, sometimes even migraines. I know somebody who suffers daily migraines that thankfully I don't have. Mine are not as frequent as hers, but she went into yoga because of it. She manages to maintain things because of yoga, not just meditation but physical as well.
Yeah.
Mainly because they're finding that the spine has such an impact on, well, everything in your body. But mostly, the alignment of the neck to that base of your head has such a big impact on migraines as well. It can help with relief. So she does aerial yoga too. She says that she's finding that's really helping her. I haven't done it yet. I promise you nothing. But restorative yoga in particular, especially for chronic fatigue, is fantastic. It's not an exercise. It's not looked at as an exercise anymore here in America.
No, it's
now
just
it's starting to show that it does have healing properties.
Well, that's good. That's more encouraging. And like you talked about, like the neck and the spine, like suboxulation, where the spine can go out of place, is something that you don't think about. But if you thought, well, all of the wiring, all the nerve wiring in your body goes through the neck and spine. It's like the major highway, and it's often the last thing that people will look at.
Yeah.
Now, as well, Katie, you mentioned, I was going to say you mentioned about, it's gone now at my head, but the different types of healing and things. Are there any other types that you've tried yourself personally? Anything else that's been like kind of non-medical?
Just all types of healing, or just yoga?
Besides yoga, I mean, like, have you
Oh,
had
yes.
acupuncture,
Okay.
bone
Yeah,
technique therapy,
besides yoga,
Reiki,
yoga
or?
certainly had a big impact, but I also take, so I used to take CBD gummies, but
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm taking these, it actually helps better than the gummies. It's, okay, I'm trying to see, Hempedix fruit medley.
Empathics.
So
All
they're
right. That
fruit,
sounds
but they're
interesting.
infused, yeah,
Right. Okay.
with the CBD oil. It's about
Okay.
like 750 milligrams. You're supposed to take like about like four of them. They're small little fruits, and
Yeah.
it it helps a lot with not always preventing migraines, but
Yeah.
certainly going through the pain.
Okay.
But the
Yeah.
recovery is amazing. You know, recovery after a migraine, at least for me, was probably one of the worst parts because it could
Right.
take days.
Oh
I
dear.
could
Right.
be
Yeah.
bedridden for
It just.
days
Yeah.
on end, but once I started embracing CBD oil, I was able to recover sometimes in hours,
Oh, that's good.
sometimes the next day.
That's
You know,
fantastic. Yeah. Well,
it
that's.
was a miracle
Yeah,
to me.
it's the magic of this medicine. Over here in the UK, it first became available back in about 2013.
Hmm.
So I think before you even got it over there, because I remember a lot of people in the group saying, "Oh, it's illegal here. We can't get it. It's an outrage." And I was like, "I've been buying it for months and years."
It just started happening
Yeah, which is
here.
really strange
You know,
because
I'd say
because
I've been on CBD for about maybe like a year and a half
oh, okay.
now, and I was blown away. My friend suggested it, and I was like, I don't know. You know, there was a misconception
Oh
here
yeah, yeah.
at the
It's
time.
common. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
education.
they
Education's
thought
grown.
that, you know, you'd get high,
Yeah,
because
no, not a bit.
there had been some medication. I don't do well high. So, I
Me
I
neither.
just don't. I don't like it. It's
Yeah,
not
it's not good.
I
No,
don't even drink alcohol. You
no.
know,
Especially after
so
a brain injury as well. You don't want to kind of
you don't
be out
know,
of your
no.
sense of self.
Especially,
It's hard
I
enough
learned
anyway.
alcohol part the worst way with brain injuries.
Yeah.
Nobody had told me, oh, don't drink alcohol,
Uh oh.
and I did. I didn't even get to like half a glass. It was a
Oh
couple of
dear.
sips, and then I was close to
Whoosh.
going to the hospital. It
Oh
was so
no.
bad.
Oh crikey.
Yeah. But
And the
so
CBD
I
though.
started, my friend suggested it, and one day my migraines were so bad, I just turned to my husband and I was like, we need to go to a smoke shop because I don't care if it gets me high or not, you know? And I did, and I recovered within hours, and I was
Wow.
completely flabbergasted.
Yeah, well, this is. I'm thinking the fact that they take. It's only the THC, which is a part that is psychoactive that gets you high. They filter out all but 0.2% of it. I became a bit of an expert on CBD oil, and people still ask me now. So yeah, there's absolutely no chance of getting high whatsoever. But
None,
you've
none.
got another
It,
84 phytochemicals in there, which all react. We've got endocannabinoid receptors in our brain. So some
right,
point in our deep past, our ancestors, I mean, even 100 years or so ago or more, they were using cannabis oil. But at some point in the past, we must have developed these in our brains through regular usage of this. So it's only natural that, well, we're
we ate
rediscovering
it.
that. Yeah, we ate it.
We ate it.
If you eat cannabis raw,
Yep,
apparently without heating it or anything, you won't get high. But
right.
you'll get the nutrients from it. It's only when they put it through carboxylation to heat it that the THC comes out. So if you eat it raw, you might kind of just feel some effects of it or whatever. I don't know. I think it's different with different types. But you generally you can get a lot of health benefits. So I know a lot of people here they will grind it up as a garnish on the salads and things, because when you
Yep.
eat it like that, it doesn't affect you the same way. But yeah, CBD was a friend of mine. He's started having epileptic fits again after many years, and he's him and his partner, his lady, they'd got the ambulance out. You know, he'd had his fit the other week, and she started giving him CBD oil in the ambulance, and just totally kind of calmed him down. And
Calmed him down.
his
Yep.
ambulance people were like totally amazed. They were like, never seen anything like it. So then they started a conversation, which was da da da, you know. And in the last week or so, our medical system have been allowed to prescribe cannabis oil or CBD oil for the last 3 years, and it's been approved by government. But
Yeah,
they've prescribed it to nobody,
yeah.
right? And
We we
now they're
have.
allowed to do it for epilepsy. One or two things they're saying now, and they can prescribe it CBD oil.
Yeah, we're getting into that. Actually, I think it's about for like 2 years now. We
Yeah.
have dispensaries now. So
Mm.
I know people who have epileptic seizures, and it was actually somebody that I know. I don't want to mention their name. So
No, that's fine. No, don't. Please don't.
it's somebody within my family. I'll say that. So they were one of the first people who suggested that I take CBD
Yeah.
oil to begin with, because they were having epileptic seizures. It was brought on by stroke.
Oh,
And
right, yeah.
but the doctor had prescribed to them for them to go to a dispensary, and in her case, she does need the THC because of her particular type of epilepsy.
Yeah, I see. Yes.
So
yeah.
it all depends, I guess, on a range.
It does,
I believe.
because the CBD oil on its own cannot do things that full spectrum Simpson oil, they call it, the full cannabis oil can do. For instance, a lot of people, bless you, a lot of people will use the full oil, Simpson oil, to treat cancers. And of course,
Yeah.
CBD can help with symptoms, but you need the THC in it for certain things. And yeah, it's epilepsy. Again, certain types of epilepsy can be one of them as well, because it's a very specific act on the brain.
Actually, just learning about that for cancer. Yeah, because I just joined here in New Jersey. We have a cancer care organizations, Yoga for Cancer Care, and I was just doing that. So
Okay.
a lot of my students, because we were talking migraines, some of them get it too, mostly from the chemotherapy. And
Right,
one of them was like, "Have you tried CBD oil?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been on it for about about a year and a half now." But so the other types of healing besides CBD, and I'm always so cautious about talking about this one because a lot of people feel that I'm going through the placebo effect. But after talking
there's
to
no sense
my
in it, yeah.
doctor recently about my types of migraines, it would be impossible for me to actually have a placebo effect from, the pain of my migraines, or even preventative.
Yeah.
Is I got a dath piercing.
Oh, you said, yeah, you did, yeah.
And I haven't had migraines in about 2 months now.
Oh, wow. So that's something that could definitely have helped. I mean, yeah, like you say, it's like I have fibromyalgia as well, which I've had for years. I won't go into that, but yeah, I can't. There's no placebo effect for that I can. Maybe some days I might feel I'm okay at that, but yeah, there's no way to actually convince your brain that this isn't happening. If you suffered it for so long, it's
right. But I still very much have the chronic fatigue. That's
I meant to ask you about
probably
that.
one
Yeah.
of the worst things.
Is that classed as CFS ME or is it something?
No, they said this is entirely traumatic brain injury. So
Okay.
I've been tested for MS and nothing.
Okay.
They just feel that it's impact related.
So it could have they classed it as? They haven't classed it as like myalgic encephalitis, swelling in the brain, or like what they used to call yuppie flu or CFS, or have they just not classified it for you?
They haven't classified it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
wow. Okay, so that's hard and annoying. I mean, there are quite a large number of chronic inflammatory illnesses. There's about 40 different types, which aren't all arthritic, but some of them are arthritic related. Fibrositis, fibromyalgia, CFS, ME, or whatever you want to call it, and different ones. And sometimes it's really tough to diagnose. I kind of got lucky by getting a fibromyalgia diagnosis, and that started when I was back in 2001. Actually, I'd had it all my life, but it was like not triggered. Then I had a flu jab in 2001. They conned me into getting a flu jab, and the day that I had that flu jab, what started as what I now know to be fibromyalgia, and the symptoms, everything was the same. And for years I looked and kind of thought, I'm just imagining this. This is like, me creating a kind of a conspiracy theory in my own head. But then I found all these studies and stuff from the States, all these people, all these ladies and stuff that had a flu jab that had triggered fibromyalgia. And I was like, what the hell?
Gosh.
So after that, obviously losing my home and everything else, it triggered in stages. So was yours present before your accident, Katie?
No.
Or afterwards?
No, this was entirely brought on from the accident.
And how long did it take to kind of come on to trigger?
It was right away.
Right away. Okay.
I had
That's unusual.
after the day after the accident.
Yeah.
At first we had said that like, it is part of, just the post concussion syndrome. That it's the fatigue of the impact. So it'll go away, and then this is one of the things that just never went away.
Right, okay.
Never. Heat impacts it, cold impacts it, you feel it everywhere. It's like in your bones. It's hard to get off of the couch, but yoga certainly does help, move things around and loosen me up. It's an everyday thing that I got to do this.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can't do too much, strenuous things. Although I ran a 5K. Yay!
Yeah, I think. Well,
so
that's fantastic. You could do that. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that people who have never experienced any type of chronic fatigue or illness, they look at people like us. Now, what I always try and explain to people is, maybe think about like your mobile phone or your cell phone, as you call it, that has a faulty battery. And that battery will only ever charge up to about 35-40%. Yeah. Whereas your healthy person, they'll go all the way to 100%. They'll keep the charge all day. We have to keep charging ours up again and again and again.
Right.
But that doesn't exclude us from making Herculean efforts sometimes, like to run a 5K, or for me to kind of, do something really physical. Like if I have my son here and he's only 5, he likes to wrestle. He likes to go out and walk in the woods, and, we have a great time. But when he's gone, I'm like, whoa, that was so much fun. But, my battery's down to like 5%.
5, yeah. And it's, I don't know if you've ever read, there's this article about, it's called the spoon theory.
Oh, yes, yeah. I've heard it a lot of times down the years. Yeah.
And my friend who was, in the beginning when I was going through all of this, I did.
It's a good entry point to understanding it.
They had said to me, just call me when you feel better. I don't, this is too much. Maybe it's all in your head. And I was like, no, literally. Yeah, it is. It's all in my head.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
No, quite literally. Yes, you are correct. It is all in my head.
You've got a wonderful sense of humor.
They meant, psychologically, what you're going through is all in your head. Maybe it's just depression or anxiety, because I did. I have,
we've all had that.
Post-traumatic stress. And,
yes, snap.
But it was too much for them. I had family members too that didn't quite understand. So, but one of my friends, out of all of them, she came across the spoon theory and had sent it to me, and I was like, "That's it." That's exactly it.
It's a good place to start.
You don't know how many spoons you're going to be given in the day.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. There's more. Some of us have kind of developed the theory and kind of metamorphosized it over the years. But going back to what you said as well about family and friends. Oh my word! The first kind of 2 or 3 years for me was a nightmare of people that, well, not many of them are still close friends, but I still keep in touch with some of them. But people, especially family as well, kind of like testing me and poking me to see if I'd break, because they thought I was pretending. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh yeah, I had a lovely house, like 4 holidays a year, great job, and kind of nice life and everything else. I suddenly thought, why don't I fake being chronically ill? Why don't I fake?
Right.
Why don't I just get lose all my money and kind of like kind of like my home and kind of why don't I just pretend that I'm a down and
Why
out for a
would you
while?
do something
Because
like
that's a
that?
really enjoyable thing to do, and yet I would have them, kind of like trying to test me, and I'd be like,
Like,
it would really
Katie,
push me to the limit sometimes. And I think sometimes, like when we get emotional ability with head injury, I would crack and I would cry and I would just be like, I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you've done this. And then it would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But it was like, whoa, this kind of like, if you don't believe me, I don't care. And in the end, it
I,
kind of toughened me up a bit,
yeah,
I think.
in the end, that's what I adopted as well as, you know what, I just don't care. It actually took my therapist because, to convince me, what was it? Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Oh
She
yeah,
would
yeah,
say
that's a
to
good
me,
one. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
yeah, you
yeah,
really
yeah.
have to adopt this, Katie. You know, she would tell me, like, you have to, because, um, so on top of all of this, because of the car accident, I was in denial about having survivor's guilt.
Yeah, yeah.
There was another passenger with me. She
Okay.
did not pass away right away. It was about like 3 weeks later after the
Oh
car
dear
accident.
me.
We have no determination on whether or not it was the car accident that had caused her sudden death,
Oh
but I
dear.
will tell you that all of her doctors beforehand said that she was perfectly healthy.
Right.
So I had this weird survivor's guilt. And when people talk about survivor's guilt, they think that it means that, oh, it's like your fault. And mine
Yeah.
wasn't that case. Mine was more of, here is this wonderful person, and they had this fantastic life, and they were helping so much people, and then there's me, and I wasn't. If anybody should have died, it should have been me, and she
Yeah.
should have
The survivor's
survived.
guilt. Yeah, I see what you
And
mean.
I was in denial about this. This was part of, the depression, the anxiety, and even
Sure.
the brain understanding of what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it confused everything, the
Yeah, I bet. I
impact.
bet it did.
So while I was going through it, my family also didn't understand what was happening to me. I'm
No.
very, very thankful that my dad, my sisters, throughout all of this, have been, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up,
No.
have
Go.
been by my side the entire time.
Oh, that's
They
wonderful.
they maybe sometimes would not push me like, oh, okay, just very gently, like, do you think you can do this today? No, I can't do this today. Okay. That was their thing. But there were several other family members in my life that, they didn't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am really unsure. Some of them are still in my life, some of them, like, not so much.
Well, yeah. Family's a
But
tough one, isn't it?
my therapist has definitely taught me to be like, you know what, though? That is their circus.
Yeah.
And if
That's
they
not your
don't want
problem.
to be a part of
Yep.
yours,
Bugger
then
off.
oh well.
Yeah, bugger off, as we say here in England.
Right.
Yeah,
The
but the
important
blessings,
part,
yeah, the blessings you had around you, the people you had around you, and that they were supportive. That's amazing, because I didn't have that. I didn't have any family around me. I was on my own. So yeah, to hear that,
I
actually, it makes me, it makes me feel better that you had
my
that as
sisters
blessings,
and my
gratitude.
dad have been advocates for me since the very beginning.
That's great.
And even sometimes when they didn't understand and they were frustrated with what I was going through, there was always at least one of them that would remind them, like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, like, the doctors don't even know what's happening. How are we to, we know Katie, even though she's not the same person she was
Yeah, we know
before,
shoes.
we know that she would not make something like this up.
Yeah.
So we
Of
just
course.
have to accept what she's going through. And I've never heard them had these conversations, but like you could definitely feel it in the energy with them. There's always been at least one of them who's always talked to the other one and been like, this is how it is. But they have been from the very beginning. But all three of them also had seen me how I was. I was always a physically active person.
Yeah.
I kept myself, together. I was very independent, and for me to go from being very independent to somebody needing me to hold on to their arm walking down the hallway, is they saw that, and it tore me apart. That's how I was. I was going down the stairs on my butt. I couldn't go
been there
down,
before. Yeah.
I couldn't go down the stairs without feeling like I was going to fall. They saw me, and then they also had conversations with me where I would start something, and then suddenly the conversation would drop, and I would forget what we were talking about. And sometimes I would be able to remember the conversation, and it's still like that. My family has certainly has accepted that that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know what we're talking about. Sometimes
that's good.
I don't.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Friends-wise, though, no, I lost a lot of friends.
Did you ever clear out? Yeah, right, yeah.
But because they felt that maybe I'm really unsure how they feel. I can't talk for them, but I do know that maybe I made them feel uncomfortable,
they looked at you differently.
A lot of them had said I was a different person.
Yeah, a lot of it was probably projecting the fact that they, just because you weren't who they wanted you to be anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite normal. Very normal.
And I do have to say that there's, my one friend, she is like a sister to me, my maid of honor, and she,
bless her.
Yeah, she went out of her way to try to understand this as much as possible. I mean, she was always a fan of the medical field, and in general, she always. We watched House together, she watches Grey's Anatomy, she's all in it, and so when she heard about this, I mean, even she said there isn't much that you can find about, PCS or traumatic brain injury, but she, she was very much supportive of everything, and she even came to see me, once a week, and... she was always been helpful throughout all of this.
Fantastic.
Another friend of mine, as well, she lived closer by, so sometimes she would take me to some of my doctor's appointments. My other friend, my maid of honor, took me to doctor's appointments. I mean, they were hands-on people,
good.
And they just wanted to. They didn't care if I got better or not. That was the main point, is a lot of people wanted to see me get better.
Yeah, they wanted you back to your old self.
More upset because I wasn't getting better, and I felt like that was my duty. And it's a lot of pressure to put on somebody who just comes out of an injury. Oh, you'll get better. That sounds more like a duty. Oh, you'll do it. But there's no guarantee. And with certain things, I've certainly learned that I've definitely accomplished a lot, and I do mean a lot in the past 9 years, but it's taken 9 years.
Yeah,
it
can take a long time as well. And like I said to you, you're truly blessed that the family and your good friend were there to walk with you. I had maybe a couple of friends in the whole time. And they were like family to me. I have 2 older brothers, but I love them, but they've never really bothered with me or kind of had much to do with my life or my son or anything. So that's fine. But then I have another friend who's been, and I met him about a year before my first head injury, Will, and he's been a brother to me, and we've had a lot of fun and adventures on the way, but despite everything, he's been that one that stuck by me, and there's another person as well who I won't mention, but they've been almost like the brother I didn't have or the sister I didn't have, so it's I can relate to that as well.
my husband has been my absolutely number one. You know,
Bless. Yeah, bless him.
we, yeah, we, so we met at Rutgers University.
Right, okay.
And we were going to. He was going to propose to me the year of the car accident.
Ooh,
and then
right,
he
okay.
didn't. Yeah. So funny, a little side story, cute romantic side story. So we had actually picked out the engagement ring before the car accident. And then the car accident happened, and I forgot all about it.
Oh, blimey.
So,
did you pick it, or did he?
Together, we actually did. We were flipping through a book at this very small jewelry store in his town. You know, like they get stuff actually like imported throughout the entire world, and actually from England. So
I used to work in the jewelry industry, Katie. For 15 years, I managed jewelry and watch shops. So yeah, you're talking to somebody that's been on the other side of the counter. Oddly enough.
So we were looking at this book, and I stopped on a page, and literally both our fingers went down at the same exact time to the ring.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
fabulous.
but I forgot all about it. Like my so the person who had passed away was my mom. She was the one who was driving. So I actually had sent her a picture of what the ring looked like about a month before the car accident.
Yeah.
So in a way, I like that she had seen it before he had put it on. And then another thing is, you know, he had gotten it, he had paid for it, everything. And then the car accident happened. He didn't propose to me until a couple of years after, mainly because we wanted to work. The number one thing was not about our engagement. It was about me finding either my plateaus overall in my brain, or finding a place in which I felt comfortable with my life.
Yeah.
You know, so and then we of course we had a court case, and I don't want to get so much into that, but he did propose about I don't even remember.
It doesn't matter.
We've been married for 3 years.
He won't hold
now,
it against
4
you.
years ago.
He won't hold it against you, I'm sure. He sounds like a truly wonderful gentleman, and it's a blessing that you've got each other. That's wonderful.
He actually kept his crappy part-time job so that he could drive me to my doctor's appointments.
You see, not all men are bad, are they? Some of them are just, you know.
Men, women, in my opinion, it depends on the person.
Yeah,
you know,
it does,
and I know I've heard horror stories of people who have left people because they just didn't understand, you know, traumatic brain injury or even their personality changed. Like my husband knew my personality changed. And he said overall, though, he knew that the underlining person was Katie, you know, me.
So he could still see you.
I'm in there somewhere.
Yeah, he could still see. He could see you. Yeah, you're not.
Yeah,
and that's part of the grieving thing, isn't it? As well, you're grieving for your old self, but who's never that precise personality used to be. He's never going to come back.
No.
And you're grieving for it, and then he must have been able to empathise and to see that and to feel that as well, and then obviously, you know, stuck with you for all of that. That's wonderful.
It's a lot of I mean, he had picked me up and brought me to bed. You know, he had, you know, I leaned on him. He watched me suddenly go through neuro fatigue out of nowhere. You know, and neuro fatigue is almost, in my opinion, just as bad as migraines, because you go from being able to talk to not being able to talk at all.
Oh yeah, you end up like being what I'd call cabbaged. We say over here, yeah, be like a cabbage, you know, like just sat there like. Ugh. I got the early days, and it was like people would try and be there talking to me, and they'd be like, "What you want?"
Yeah, and then you just don't know you just want to sleep, you know, off, and then sometimes sleeping it off makes it worse. But you know, like he always had to watch me, especially in public places, because of overstimulation. I have this tendency to stare off. We found out they're not seizures. I'm not having seizures, but I just consciously just shut down.
Right. Okay.
My eyes stare off, but I just
You just
am not
you're
there. Somebody
internalized.
has to nudge me.
Yeah, yeah, like being internalized as well.
And then, so he had to watch me because of that. I
Yeah.
found this great hearing doctor.
Oh
No,
wow.
no doctor wanted to deal with me about this. I wanted to figure out how I could be in public places without having overstimulation, or at least lessen the overstimulation. And
Yeah.
noise was a bigger impact. So if you can
Okay.
cancel out maybe one of those,
Yeah, the frequencies.
overstimulations,
Yeah.
it can help. So this hearing doctor decided to give me swimmer plugs for my ear, but
Okay.
they're not the foam ones,
No, like the coiled
because
ones.
it's not enough, the foam ones. So she
No.
did these like wax ones that has a vent in it, so I
Ah,
can
okay.
hear just enough.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
know what you mean.
that certainly helped, especially for my wedding, because I did
Yeah.
not want to wear these big Bose,
No, 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 no.
headphones
Well,
for my wedding.
and you needed to be able to hear him say "I do" as well.
Right, that would be
That's the
helpful.
important thing, because if he just stood there like quiet and he's like, that would be awkward.
Yeah. Oh, that was another. I mean, talk about changing things about your life. A lot of these wedding places that we had looked into. Now we've been married for 3 years now, but just to show you the struggle of what it is, even with public places, and just not
Yeah.
understanding, or not knowing what to do about your condition. We were looking for places, and a lot of these places didn't know what to do, and they'd give us these options, but stimulation. All we kept thinking was like overstimulation, overstimulation. There was like a lot, and
Yeah.
there was no place for me to retreat if I had to go. They didn't have any alternate options. We wanted to
No.
get married on the beach. There was costs for that. Things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
My sister goes and finds a place, and this girl that works there, Marissa, at Martell's, and I'm just going to say it because they were fantastic, and
Go on,
everybody
it's
should
all
know.
right,
If you
don't worry.
live in New Jersey and you want to get married, look at Martell's, because there's this wonderful girl, Marissa. She's the wedding planner there, and her sister has traumatic brain injury.
Oh, I see. Right.
Worse than mine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
let me tell you, I had the best wedding. I don't remember everything about it,
No, you got
but
photos. Yeah.
she had options. She had retreat places.
Wow, yeah.
She
So
had
she understood.
alternate things to do.
She understood completely.
Completely. And
Well,
if
she
she
deserves
didn't,
a shout out then. That's all right.
yeah, if she didn't,
Well done, Marissa.
she'd figure it out.
Yeah, well done,
You know,
Marissa.
well, she was so fantastic. So actually, it was her idea for us to get tickets to send people to go to the aquarium and to the arcade, so that for about 2 hours, me and my husband could have the entire place to ourselves.
That's a fantastic
So,
idea. And what a great way
right?
to break up, because sometimes at weddings you just kind of like, everybody's just sat around and there's nothing much happening. But yeah, and especially when you've got little ones, when you've got kids as well, yeah, to give them a little distraction.
Yeah, and
That could be
a lot
wonderful.
of
What a
people
great
were
idea.
worried, because the people who did know me, they were like, "Are you gonna have kids at your wedding?" I know it's, but as soon as my friend, I call her my friend Marissa. I actually still
Bless her.
talk to her.
Oh, good.
So yeah, we go and see her at least once a year, actually at Martell's, and then I still text her and all of that. But she really understood my condition. So there are people out there that
Yeah.
will understand.
Well,
It's just difficult sometimes to find them.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
suppose
Sometimes
so.
my sister has this great intuition as to where to look. To be honest,
That's good. Yeah.
it's
I think that's an important point as well. One thing I've always had a background as well in, I don't know if you know this, obviously I talked about Reiki and other stuff I do, but anything like to do with like telepathy, ESP, psychic stuff, all that kind of thing. And still do that, like trance mediumship, past lives, all kinds of weird stuff. But it's, you find that when you've had a brain injury or more than one of brain injuries, depending on not necessarily, but depending on which part of the brain you've injured, say the occipital or frontal lobe or wherever, that you can go from being what life has made you, but kind of logical, straightforward person, and it can, I feel, it can sometimes push you further into your right brain, your intuitive brain.
Yeah.
I feel it can make you more sensitive, more as you are sensitive anyway. But I feel it can make you more psychic, more kind of open to things as well, and even more in some ways, like you were talking about your art and photography. I know you can't do photography anymore, but art-wise, for me, it was a massive boost. Although my life had gone to crap, I found that my creativity was going through the roof after 2 or 3 years. I was like, whoa, doing all kinds of things. And
In the beginning,
neurogenesis
go
as
ahead, I'm sorry.
well. Yeah, sorry, neurogenesis. That'll be the next thing I want to ask you about. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I actually, I guess maybe because I was so strong in the creative side of my brain that when the car accident happened, I had a complete loss of it. It was gone.
Yeah,
I
for a while.
was mortified with myself. I felt betrayed. You know, I couldn't believe that my brain couldn't do it. You know, I struggled with even writing. Like I wrote short stories. I still can't write short stories the way that I used to.
No.
But you know, I had done these things and it was gone, like just utterly gone. So my therapist, like I had suggested, had told me to start, you know, drawing, you know, trying to draw again. I did, and I slowly began to remember how to do things, and then I then advanced to like painting. And then I remembered how to paint. Like it took months. I'm not telling you like, oh, you know, I started doing it, and then like a couple of months later, I was okay. No, it took like years.
It takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it took years for me to slowly get to where I was when I was in Rutgers University. You know, and then, but as far as photography is concerned, no, not so much. Everything I base I still have my camera. I do my camera. Just everything's on auto. You know, I really can't do the manual anymore. I get very confused with aperture. You know,
so
there's just some things I just can't do.
Basic coordination.
I'm sorry, but I am now a part-time art instructor at a sip and paint. So that is super fun.
Fantastic.
And the great thing is you know, finding a job was very difficult.
Yeah.
Because I was straightforward. I am not a liar. I can't lie. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm not a liar. No, I mean, what I mean is, I can't lie for the life of me.
No,
like,
you can't.
Very bad at it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, yeah, you can't. If they say that if you're a good liar, you have to have an extremely good memory.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like,
that's
well, yeah,
not a case
it
for
just
me.
doesn't suit us, does it? It's like, no chance, can't do that.
That's just not. That's something I cannot do. So when people were asking me, "Is there any conditions we need to know about?" I was like,
"Oh yeah,
yes.
Actually, there's a few." Yeah, and you're like, "Oh dear." Yeah,
so
I think it does make you more truthful.
There was places that they would find excuses not to take me on.
Yeah,
it was obvious. I mean, they wouldn't say it's because of your brain injury. They can't
no, they
do
can't
that.
say
That's
that.
completely illegal.
No.
You know, no. So they find out, we're already filled. We have people for this position. We don't have something for you in this. My favorite was overqualified. That
overqualified, yeah.
Yeah, or underqualified.
Jeez.
There's that too. You know, the overqualified really made me laugh a lot for that one.
Oddly enough, I've been through that in the past few years as well. You know, kind of, I was like managing, you know, really shops with like 10, 15 staff and, you know, multi-million-pound turnover and things. And then a few years back when I needed work, I was looking for like work back in the jewelry industry as well, and I applied to kind of like the lowest kind of cheapest high street jewelers we have here, and filled out the profile online and that, and they just said, no, you're definitely not what we're looking for.
Not what we're looking for. That's what
It's
they
like,
do. Not what
you know,
we're
I only
looking for.
applied for like a sales assistant's job or something, whereas I could have run kind of like the whole area, you know, as an area manager, or could have run the shop myself. But they were like,
Yeah.
no, we don't. So it was like, yeah, you kind of, it's frustrating, isn't it?
But if I don't tell them, and I make here was my thought.
Yeah.
If I don't tell them about my condition and I make mistakes, they're just going
Yeah.
to yell at me, and that's just going to trigger everything off.
Exactly, yeah. No,
You know, so
honesty
I
is the best
needed
policy.
to find somebody to understand.
Yeah, I think honesty is the best policy in that respect, because yeah, if something had happened and then, you know, later on, you know, if you got really stressed and they shouted at you, or a problem occurred, then you could end up getting like a migraine trigger, or anything, you know, you could end up just being really
Depression,
depression,
anxiety.
fatigue, and so on as
I
well.
already have those. I don't need more.
No,
You know,
I mean,
Yeah.
what happened to me in my job in 2006? I'd gone to work at a new firm. It was very technical. It was on the telephone, computer. It was calculations, mathematics, and sorting out people's mortgages and things, which wasn't what I wanted to do, but I needed the money. And it happened. My accident happened about after the training, which is the first couple of months, which was quite extensive. It happened in about the third or fourth month, and I went back into work, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to carry on doing this job. And I told them what had happened, and they didn't believe me. And I got bullied and picked on, and just eventually I even got a diagnosis, a letter from a doctor saying this guy's got Post Concussion Syndrome, that you need to take it into account. By Christmas, New Year time, they demoted me and given me a pay cut, and had me like making people's cups of tea and coffee and stamping letters. And they made me go in, because I was commuting about 2 hours each way, bus or train. They made me go in and start at 7 in the morning. So I had to with the brain injury, I had to get up super early. And they waited till my birthday and then suspended me. And while I was suspended, I was just in such a depression. I just thought, well, after about 4 weeks, I couldn't handle it anymore. And they were like just, you know, waiting to call me back in for some kind of like suspension hearing or whatever. And I just said, look, I give up, I quit. And then they owed me 2.5 months' wages, and I never paid it. So, but yeah, they waited till my birthday. I brought cakes and sweets and stuff in for everybody, and you know, they just kind of like marched me downstairs.
you don't need them. You don't need them.
No. Well, those people, I won't mention their name. But if people in England know who these people are, and they are some of the vilest human beings around. But yeah, you don't need that. So I think that kind of taught me a bit massive lesson.
The job that I had kept me on their payroll for as long as they could. So I cannot say anything bad about them, and I didn't find out in a horrific way. They contacted me to let me know that they could no longer take me on as an employee. Mm-hmm. I completely understood, because at that point we were almost going on 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, like it was a long time that they were waiting for me, and they needed somebody for my job. You know, a temp was just not going to cut it. And I told them, you know what, you absolutely go and find somebody. I don't know how long I'm going to be here this way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was very thankful towards my dad, my husband, that, you know, my dad, I was living with him at the time. He wasn't having me do any kind of rent. The important part was for me to figure out my brain. Yeah. And this did. It went on for years. You know, my husband supported me, luckily, financially. He understood things. I also had saved up for several years when I was in college and then after college. So I also had money for myself if I needed to spend it.
Oh, that's
you know,
that's
good. I was okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Financially on my own by not having a job.
Whoa,
As long as I
that's a
lived
blessing.
rent-free somewhere.
Oh yeah,
And
of course.
my dad gave me that opportunity. I am ever so thankful. I've heard, again, horror stories from people that I know that have been kicked out of their house.
Yeah. It's not, it's a
but
tough thing to take.
I cannot say anything about my last employer. They were fantastic. They kept me on the medical coverage for a while,
Mm-hmm.
It was, but when they had to let me go, then my husband was able to put me on his medical coverage, so that was good. But really, it was finding a job again.
Being reemployed.
Like years later, that was so difficult. I went to Walmart.
Yeah.
And,
you go as low as you can.
yeah, they hire anybody. But I was forward with them about this, and at the same time, I was also worried about like the noise and carrying things and things like that. So, but I had went to my employer now, at the Sip and Paint, and I was straightforward with them. Now, in the meantime, I had an Etsy account. I was getting a little money here and there by painting flower pots and, sending them throughout the United States. And, some of them, were really nice. So I no longer have the Etsy account because between being a yoga instructor and between, doing the Sip and Paint, it takes a lot of my time. So, but I was straight out forward with them. I told them that I hope that my art that I had showed them speaks for itself. That I had graduated from Rutgers. There's just I let them know ahead of time. Though is just I cannot handle money.
Yeah, well,
like just counting is not a part of. That's the part of my brain that's been affected the most.
Yeah, there's a name for it. Yeah. Yeah, there's a name for the inability. I went through all these terms in the last podcast, the one before, and there is one that's specifically to do with money and calculation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I said so. There may be times where you have to remind me we've had a conversation about something that you may have to remind me of things. So this is what they did. I mean, fantastic people. As far as like how to clean things up and how to do things, they printed out a check sheet for me.
Oh, wow.
They did it all themselves. Katie, this is what you got to do at the end.
Yeah.
This is what you got to do in the beginning.
Wow.
Be sure, so I could just check it off as I go.
I think, from hearing you talk as well, I know you've been through a lot there, especially the initial accident, but yeah, yours is one of the more, in the end here, getting to the end of it, towards it, we're in more the positivity, more that, the kind of things can go right, even though if the people that are meant to help you don't always. But yeah, that's fantastic to hear.
The one thing that I have learned is, because mentally, there's still things that like I do and I don't realize that I do. Yeah. So, slipping into depression is certainly, one of them. Another one is isolating myself. Don't realize you're doing these things all the time. But also to go into having these people also isolate you, this alienation of I think the hardest part was people trying to remind you who you were. The hardest part for me. Like, but you didn't always used to do this.
No,
I do this now.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, that's
I've changed.
Shouldn't you be healed by now?
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a timeline? No, there's no timeline. Oh, but the internet says that there is a timeline. The internet's wrong.
Yeah, Mr. Google doesn't really know very much.
It doesn't always, right.
Mr. Google will tell you whatever you want to hear. Yeah, Mr. Google will tell you whatever you want to hear at that moment. He's very flexible on that.
WebMD said this. Well, WebMD also says I have cancer when I have a cold.
Yeah, well,
like,
this leads us on to another thing that I want to talk about, and in my podcast, I'm not just covering traditional means and methods and everything, because of the background in healing. I look much further. Now, recently, I don't know if you know about an American gentleman called Paul Stamets, the mushroom
it sounds
guy.
familiar.
Yeah, he's basically the world's leading expert on fungi and mushrooms and things like that. And this guy has a brain the size of, yeah, huge brain. This guy is just like, he's so knowledgeable. He's got all these patents and things to like save the bees and butterflies and birds, and to get rid of insecticides and all this kind of stuff. The American government have employed him several times. After 9/11, the American government came to him regarding combating kind of like chemical weapons attacks and things. So he's very kind of well known. He's just released a film called Fantastic Fungi, which is about the healing properties of mushrooms. Now, I've always been into plant-based medicine, trees, plants, and mushrooms is an area where I'm just starting to learn about now. He's saying he used to have a ridiculously bad stutter, and he couldn't, like, if you liked a girl or something, you couldn't look her in the eye. He couldn't even think about talking to anybody because he just like. And he used mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms and things to help heal something we call neurogenesis, which is like the formation of new neural pathways and kind of like expanding your brain. Now, the one he mentions in particular is lion's mane, which is a Japanese fungi mushroom, and if you combine that with vitamin D, that can be really, really powerful. So he also mentioned using like psilocybin mushrooms on top of that as well, because those are the ones that really, really restore and remap the brain. Now, I know obviously that's like, oh yeah, they are kind of used or misused like other substances are as recreational drugs. And
Right.
we totally agree across the board that that is wrong. Any of these substances, they may have like recreational use for people that don't know any better. Or kids or teenagers or whatever that are trying to, the first experience and having a horrible time. But they also have very serious medical benefits. And all these substances have been reopened for study now. So the main one for neurogenesis, and he's talking about people with Alzheimer's and dementia and things, is where they're giving them these stacks of maybe 2-3 different types of mushrooms daily with vitamin D, and the results they're seeing are just like they're coming back to life. So I think this could maybe be an important part of concussion recovery. I know in my early days after concussion, I'd always used allopathic medicine. Not allopathic, sorry, homeopathic. Homeopathic, so I'd use arnica and different things, and that would reduce the sense of swelling and bruising. But what you're saying is there's actually a lot of studies and a lot of evidence scientifically now that all types of acquired brain injury, deteriorative brain injury, can be helped with mushrooms, like lion's mane and things. So I don't know, what do you think about using plants and CBD oil is technically a plant medicine.
I think
So,
CBD I'll go as far as that.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about mushrooms. I mean,
Oh no, I
might
don't
be
necessarily
opposite.
mean the psychedelic ones. I don't necessarily mean just those, but I mean that the ones that aren't as well, because there's plenty others. There's like reishi, turkey tail, another one. Lion's mane, particularly, is the one that's good for neurogenesis. I mean, if I think back
Quite
years ago,
possibly. You
yeah,
know, I have no. I would be interested. I think I would definitely be interested in like looking
yeah,
at
see
it
if it works.
online.
Yeah, yeah,
Looking more into that. That would I. You know what? I am open to anything as long as it doesn't get
yeah.
me high or drunk.
No, it
And
won't. No.
it's. I am definitely open to things. Obviously, I went and I got this DAC piercing. I mean, I thought that was probably the most ridiculous thing that I had done. But I thought,
No,
you
but
know what? It's going to make my ear look pretty.
yeah, and it's working.
So,
It's working. So
I had no idea. And at first, I had contacted this acupuncturist And he's like, no, I don't do that, but I'm gonna, bring you over to this tattoo artist, and you can look into them. And
Yeah.
I did, and I contacted them. And here's the funny thing about them. They said that they do not do acupuncture piercing. That is all aesthetic. It's just for the look of it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't deny it
Yeah, they
either.
can't, but it's because they're not allowed to promote it as being for health uses.
Right.
Is the FDA or whatever? Yeah.
I went to them, and they did. I mean, it works for me. And then another friend of mine went there. She has migraine issues. She was born with them. She did it, and she says she still gets migraines. So when I went to my doctor about it, he had said that it could just be the type of migraine, like different types of migraine that it may work for, not others.
Okay.
But who knows? Like we talked about when we were on Facebook together. Sometimes it's just a roll of the dice thing. So if this daft piercing thing works, mushrooms could too.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, I think, if I go back, because I probably told you, when I started running these groups, I think I've been on Facebook since 2005 or something like that. And so I came through the early years, and then about 10 years ago, there was all these people, there's a few people that started to come into the groups and start talking about cannabis oil and CBD oil. And it was like there was a storm of people complaining, this is an outrage. You can't have drugs discussed on this forum. This. And it was actually literally outrage, and we had to deal with that regularly. And,
I saw that.
But
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, going forwards, it kind of calmed down, and then all the legalization started in certain states. And the thing that made me constantly chuckle out loud was the fact that CBD oil was illegal in the States, but there were so many states where cannabis was legal. I was like, what?
Yes.
You can have cannabis,
like
but you can't have CBD.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Utah, Colorado.
I just used to sit and laugh at that for ages and think, well, just go to a different state and kind of sort yourself out. It seemed bizarre.
Okay, I have this theory about the USA, and I'm sure there's going to be backlash about this.
No, not from me.
I think we're just ingrained to be people who argue with each other.
That's common these days. That's because there's a culture of divide and conquer, isn't there?
In us to cause an uproar about things, we go and we leave England to uproar about that, French, the French-Indian, war, and then Civil War. We're just.
Renegades.
I think we're just meant to argue with each other.
Well, no,
that's what it comes down to.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, because that actually gets things done. If you just kind of like quietly agreeing with people, or kind of like kowtowing and letting them,
that's how
then that's dangerous. Yeah, because I mean, at the moment, if you look at Facebook and the internet at the moment, you can't really have an opinion about anything publicly, apart from maybe, is this puppy really cute, or does this cake look nice, or whatever. But if you
what about the dress fiasco? Is it white or is it blue?
If you go beyond that, then immediately a complete stranger is going to descend on you and kind of like tear you to pieces. So this is one of the main reasons why I decided after all this time to stick my neck over the parapet and make the podcasts. Is really to be able to have somewhere where we can discuss these things intelligently with a lot of context, rather than just a few lines of kind of an emoji where you're trying to express yourself on social media, but to actually have a conversation, and to get people used to having conversations again about it, without fearing being shut down.
Yeah, I think my nurse friend, a friend of mine actually from college, had the perfect way of saying about healing and what to do, because I had told her about the daft piercing. I thought that she was going to rip me apart about it, because the medical field, there isn't enough research.
Because they're not willing to research.
Right.
They're not going to pay for the research, so,
They don't know. So from some people that I've told, they're like, oh, it's a placebo effect. But I spoke to her because, I want to hear her opinion about it. And she goes to me, she goes, Kate, if it works,
Do it.
cares?
Who cares? Yeah, do it.
If it's not harming you or other people, who cares?
Yeah, good for her.
And I was like, yeah. And she was like, Katie, if it works for you, I believe it. She's like, because I've seen you with your migraine.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, yeah, absolutely. She's like, but she's like, if it works for you, she's like, there's that vagus nerve there. It's a parasympathetic nerve.
Yeah, vagus
Could
nerve,
it be
yeah.
stopping some swelling in your brain? It's possible that it's lowering the stress levels in your body just enough. Your blood pressure in your body just enough so that your brain doesn't swell.
Yes, yeah. Well, that vagus nerve, it goes all the way down your neck. It goes down, right all the way down and ends near your stomach, your gut. Now,
Yep.
we know that you've got a left and a right, but you've got two brains in your head that connected in the middle. You've got a brain in your heart. You've got neurons and gliali there. That's been researched by Cambridge, MIT, and they've said, yeah, your heart can think for itself. But there's also the microbiome in the gut, and the vagus nerve joins all four of them together. So where it ends, like in the gut, is where your microbiome is, which literally it's roughly about 2 kilos is the microbiome, the live part of your gut. And they say, well, that can make serotonin. It's got neurons in it as well. It's got a brain of its own. So this vagus nerve, which can be stimulated, by the way, by laughing, singing and dancing and kind of things like that. Mantra as well, yeah. You can get artificial stimulants. Or like one of my favourites, if you have a lot of time, you can look on YouTube, you can find the Rife frequencies. And there is one there for vagus nerve stimulation. Or just look up. So yeah, you can do it kind of so many times as it suits you. But yeah, that's really important. And I think if doctors could understand the relationship between that and healing as well, like you say, your nurse friend did, then that's great.
At least here in America, what I've noticed, I've seen a lot of these books, and I can't give you authors' names off the top of my head, but there's been a lot of books on gut and brain activity.
Yes, microbiome,
and, I know my mother-in-law, talk about another person who goes out of her way to help me out and figure things out too. She has so many books on gut and brain and how, if they're not so much diets, but maybe ways of eating, or like you said, like plant-based stuff, or even, my doctors had pushed protein for me. They suggested that in my case I did it, especially with the chronic fatigue. Eating more protein for me gave me more energy for my chronic fatigue.
Yeah, different. Again, you really need to see, ideally, a nutritionist to help with that. One thing I don't know, which I have mentioned in podcasts before, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's got into the news over here, is something called GC-MAF.
I have not heard it, no.
It's a natural protein in the human body. It stands for glycoprotein-derived macrophage activating factor, so hence the name GC-MAF. But it's in a healthy person. It's a tiny little protein linked to vitamin D binding, and what it does is it's the trigger that activates the immune system and what they call the macrophages, which are the bits that eat all the unhealthy cells. As your body is producing every day, it's producing hundreds, even thousands of cancer cells, but these macrophages go off and eat them up. And other inflammation and things, your body just sends these cells off to do that, and it's a GC-MAF that stimulates your immune system. Now it's in the human body. It's perfectly natural. They say the scientists say you have 1/1000th of a gram of this stuff in you. 1/1000th of a gram. That's all you need, is that or a little bit more, in order to fight off anything from cancer to chronic fatigue, all kinds of stuff. So I've just started on week 1 of a protocol. Basically, you get it in a probiotic powder form. It's about 42 strains plus use colostrum. You make it into a yogurt, and it will take about 3-4 weeks, about 3 weeks to really kickstart your immune system entirely. And if you look at the mainstream media, they'll be like, oh, this doesn't work, this is kind of like, this is rubbish, this is. But what it does is it replaces, in the microbiome in the gut, it uses all the bacteria that you would find in a healthy newborn baby. And over the weeks or months, if you take it for months, it will restore your gut back to how it was, kind of like literally when you were
Oh,
born.
I am interested in that. I mean, before this, I
Have a look at it.
Now,
Look
now I am.
look for
Yeah.
Dr. David Noakes as well. He's in fact he's been in. Unfortunately, he's been persecuted himself and his partner, his lab, and he's been in court last week and this morning. They're trying to British government. They first ruined him, took all his money, closed his business down, and are now trying to extradite him to France. They've already illegally extradited his partner, his lab technician as well, and she's on hunger strike. But he was curing up to 90% of cancers even at stage 4. And the MHRA, which is the governing body for medicine here, is on the board of it is the corporate heads of GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, all those drug companies. They're the ones that had him shut down.
Oh my God.
And so, because in this country it's illegal, as it probably is in America, to claim that anything but chemotherapy or radiotherapy works for cancer. And so he's on the edge of being extradited for this. And all he's done is cure people. So, it's powerful when it's curing cancer. But he's also had a lot of results, which is why I'm doing the protocol now, for chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
I don't know about that, at least for USA. They're finding, from what I understand, especially with the commercials that are going on, on our television and such, that we are trying to find alternatives to chemotherapy.
Well,
so
there's
it's
many,
not.
yeah.
However, I have heard from people who work for drug companies that there are actual cancer pills that are not chemotherapy that have what they basically just do is they shut it down. They don't go after the person who made them, but they certainly just they say like, this doesn't work, or they keep it in what they call purgatory.
Yeah,
where
they can't be used.
It's not passed,
yeah.
but it's
Well, what you'll find is that with GC math and with cannabis oil, things are all natural. So the thing is, they can't be patented by drug companies, and that is the key. From what I understand, is like, well, if it's something that's already in the human body, we can't patent it, we can't sell it, we can't sell it to anybody else, we can't use it. So let's get rid of it. So that seems to be the kind of sad state at the moment. But yeah, I'm gonna keep on this protocol.
They seem to be pushing it more and more. It's at least here. I mean, yes, absolutely, chemotherapy, especially if it's advanced. What else are you gonna do? But I've heard of people who have gone off of chemotherapy and looked at alternative things.
Yeah, there are many things I won't go into now. But for anybody who is interested, while we're kind of digressing on the subject, it's my fault. Look up a gentleman called Ty Bollinger. That's T-Y. Ty Bollinger. He's an American chap. Him and his wife Charlene, and you can find it on YouTube now, which is a series called The Truth About Cancer. And I watched that twice, and it's quite long when you watch it all, but my mind was blown apart, where I didn't realise all the different cures and things that are out there, but which you will not know about. There's this stuff all over the world, it's just like people are recovering from cancer all the time without chemotherapy. And this gentleman says as well, there's Ty Bollinger, you said there's absolutely no reason to fear cancer at all. But unfortunately, we're in a system where it's like, and he tells stories. There's children there in America where teenagers refuse chemotherapy, and this one girl said, "Well, next thing you know, there's 8 police guards outside my house. They're taking me out to hospital, and
oh my God,
committing me to hospital to make me have chemotherapy, and I didn't want it." So you've got to be very careful, kind of discussing that.
Yeah, luckily we don't. We don't have that issue. If you refuse chemotherapy, then that's on you.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting sent to, by police officers to get
I
to
can't
the
remember which
hospital to
state
see
it
these
was in
things.
now. I think there's some states though where the Children's Act was saying invoke the Children's Act, and that's it. They were taken away from the. He said her parents weren't at home; they just took her.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of like well, so yeah, I guess it depends on what state or area you live in.
Yeah, it's here in the States, we don't all have the same
No, 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 no.
ideas.
It's just very
So
different.
there's going to be more liberal states and there's going to be more conservative states, and then of
Mm,
course there's the states that are everything in between.
yeah,
So it's some states have taxes on food and on stuff, and then other states not so much.
don't.
So it
Mm,
all depends on where you go. Like Vermont, for example, I went up there and I didn't need any change on me. Everything was money, cash.
cash, yeah.
There was no need for coins when I was up there. It was so weird.
Wow.
But you come down here and
Yeah, worlds
something
apart.
is $5.99. Oh, thank you.
Fair enough.
That 1 penny. Okay.
Yeah.
But
So,
my point is yeah, it all depends, and I guess you can say the same thing as far as comparing. Well, I don't want to compare cancer to post concussion. That's
no,
bad.
no, no.
So no. But I mean, as far as healing is concerned, I mean, this is
Yeah,
something that I've learned with my fellow friends that I have that have traumatic brain injury or other illnesses. Is we're all finding different things that work for us, and it's not always going to work for the other person.
No, of course not. No.
It all depends on the person, and you need to go out there and kind of find your own thing. And I've done things that I was skeptical about, but I was so open to trying to stop the pain of the migraines that I went to a smoke shop and I was like, I don't care if this has THC in it. I don't care. Just give it to me at this point.
You're looking a bit hard.
But they didn't, and they were like, I suffer migraines too. Here's something, that I take, and here's something that's lower. And she explained that let's start you off on the lower end first, because this is your first time doing this, and we'll see what works and what doesn't. You don't want to just push on, 750 milligrams. No, let's start you off on the lower scale and
wean
see
you on.
what is the number.
Yeah, let's wean you on. Yeah. Well,
that's
always a way to do it.
What will work for you?
Yeah, that's always a way to do it. And some things won't work for everybody, and everybody's a different way. Although some people do give up too early because they're looking sometimes for like that silver bullet.
That quick answer.
Yeah, they're looking for the silver bullet, and there isn't one. So sometimes people will take I think when I moved away from all medications, and I was looking for something for mood. I was like looking at St. John's wort, different things, and I got to 5-HTP, and then I started taking the recommended dose, and I was like, woof, I was a bit too stimulated with it. So then I thought, rather than just come off it and go, oh no, that's not for me, I cut the dose right down and then built back up again, lower than the recommended dose. And then over time I found that I needed more and more as my brain got used to it. And then there was a point where it was like, now what's depression? Sorry, kind of like what's that? So it's like 5-HTP tablets have literally helped save my life.
And the same thing can be said with regular medications out there. They had tried me on all different types of medication. 2 of them had brought on suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank God I have a primary doctor that when he put me on the medication would be like, I want to see you back here in a week, just to see how I developed, and then kept on it every week to see how I was doing this, but
good.
He was great with it in the fact that, okay, you're having these side effects. Nope, this is not the one for you.
Yeah.
Then of course there was the ones where he was like, okay, so these are the side effects. Are you comfortable with these side effects? Because the medication is actually working.
Yeah.
and then he gave me the option of whether I wanted to be on that medication with the side effects or not, and if not, let's try something else.
That sounds ideal. Yeah, I certainly didn't get
He
that.
was. You would think that a neurologist would help me with this. Nope, this was my primary doctor. He was
that's
amazing.
good. It's almost like a neuropharmacologist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
good man.
And my psychologist, well, she's a psychologist, she's not a psychiatrist. The psychiatrists are usually the ones that prescribe medication. Psychologists help you more with more
coping. Yeah, the coping strategies.
Yeah, like of other things, behavioral problems. So she was, always phenomenal on me about this too, and she was also watching me while I was on these medications.
Yeah.
Because I do have a tendency to disassociate ever since the car accident as well. I call it my I don't feel like a person. I feel like an alien would feel like if they are a person. Weird. Right.
Well, that's quite common, yeah.
I don't even understand other people's emotions.
Yeah.
And how they're reacting to things, because that's disassociation, So I realized I was having suicidal thoughts when I was disassociating. And it was so strange, because it was almost like the inner brain of me, while I was having these suicidal thoughts, were like, Katie, I don't think you normally have these thoughts. And then I was like, you're right, I don't. And then it was like, maybe you should talk to your doctor. And I was like, you know what? I should.
Yeah, that's
so
always
I
a good
literally
point.
called the doctor the day after. And I was like, I'm kind of planning my suicide. This is not right?
No.
And he's like, no, this is not. He's like, I need you to drink lots of water, and I need you to get off of that medication as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I don't remember the medications names. I had taken so many, David. So many. I don't even remember which ones.
Yeah. I could probably list most of the ones they put me on, but I'd still miss a few. But yeah, it's hard to find one that would work for you, and I think.
But I had a friend that had taken that medication.
Oh, she's fine.
And she didn't have any of the side effects.
Yeah, of course, yeah. For what
totally worked for her.
Yeah, like what's one person's meat is another person's poison. They say, but it is really odd, yeah. But I guess
the same can be said with CBD, with mushrooms, with that piercing. I'm open. I've learned to be like, what, I can't tear any of these things that are coming out down, especially the stuff that doesn't have full medical research on it, especially if it is new, because who's to say?
Yeah, well, that's where the research is out and is in continuing, because when they're doing one study on something, they're finding actually it doesn't just do what we hoped it would do; it's doing something else as well. So it's actually, forgive the pun, but some of the research is mushrooming. So, but basically, they kind of thinking, well, we can use it for one thing, and then all of a sudden, well, actually, it's got all these different uses. What the hell?
Right.
So, like, I think in the I read this year in America, the FDA has approved a nasal spray, which is basically ketamine. What it is it's the fastest acting antidepressant known to mankind. So if you have people that are, say, like you phoned your doctor and said you're planning your suicide, or if somebody's had a bad episode, or they're really, really distraught, literally it works within minutes to totally alleviate it, and then you can get them onto something longer term. So it does have a tremendous ability. So that's been approved one. I've heard from several.
That's very Ray Bradbury kind of science fiction.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But it's not science fiction.
Because it does work, and does tremendous work for chronic pain. Now, obviously, because it's still classed as a street drug, when it was invented as an anaesthetic in, I think, 1962, and they initially just used it for children, and elderly people for when they were having surgery, and they used it on the battlefield in like Vietnam and places like that as an anaesthetic because it was safer and it didn't suppress the breathing. But then later on, it got used in kind of veterinary use, and then it got the slang name of like being horse tranquilizer and things, and so it just got a bad name. But it was developed at Park Davis Lab, big pharmaceutical company, and now it's been looked at, and I've had quite a few messages, and I've spoken to quite a few people in the groups that said privately, have said, well, I go see my doctor, I get a little oral dispensation of ketamine, and that's it, I'm pain free for days and weeks, and so on as well. You can get it here, but you have to pay privately in a clinic, and it costs a fortune. And they do give it to kind of like terminally ill patients here as well, and people with really severe chronic pain. And it is literally known to be the fastest working kind of drug of its kind. So they're still trying to synthesize that in other ways. And then, of course, as I mentioned in another past podcast, for the PTSD, there's the use of MDMA, which is, again, another one that was synthesized. It's been used for trauma therapy. There's a lot of studies on that going back to the 50s. But that's been used. Yeah. There's actually underground therapists in the United States that are doing therapy for people that have undergone, whether it's brain injury or they've had violent relationships or they've had childhood abuse or whether they've been in the forces or whatever, for whatever reason, and they're getting amazing results just for like 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions. So you can't really throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's got to be in the right setting with the right control, the right kind of science and study behind it, like you say.
Well, going off of medication here for a moment, yes. But just to talk about testing things out and such, I had back when actually a lot of my family, my friends were kind of like skeptical about this one. I had done EMDR, which is that was that I have to say helped me through so much of my trauma and understanding it. Yeah. And I didn't do the eye therapy for it. For this one, I did more of the holding the paddles. Okay. Yeah. Reliving the experience and then allowing the vibration and the tempo to kind of bring my emotions back to a neutral place, so that I can look at it in a non-judgmental way. Yeah, that sounds great. So, I mean, EMDR had done so much stuff, and now they're finding so much research on it. They're watching people and reading their brain patterns while they do it. I'll send you what it looks like before EMDR and after EMDR. Yeah, please do. Fantastic. What a huge influence it has on the brain. It does. Marvelous. I couldn't do the visual because, as I mentioned before, I had eye therapy. Yeah. You know, and here's another thing about eye therapy too. A lot of people say like, I did eye therapy and it didn't work for me after like a week. Okay. Yeah. Eye therapy can also cause vomiting. They didn't like that. I did a lot of it because I did not want to lose my eyesight. I would do anything to not lose my eyesight. And then now I have 24-year-old eyes. I'm just saying. But, you know, it's a lot of work. But my point is we were unable to do the eye part of EMDR. And but we were able to work with more with vibration and tempo. And David, in a couple of occasions, it certainly saved my life. It was able for me to allow my brain to slowly reconstruct itself. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, you know, but it was able to bring my thoughts back to, I guess, where they were supposed to be. I guess that's the best
well,
way to say.
yeah,
Like, put them right on track. There we go.
yeah,
That's a better way of saying
or
it.
kind of get back to a similar junction to where you were before.
Yeah.
Right. So, we've covered a lot of information and a lot of stuff that I didn't even expect we'd be discussing. So that's always good when when you get talking and there's all kinds of different routes and things you take. So right, finally, just to sum this up, because I'm aware we've been yabbing for a while now.
Sorry.
What's going on with you now, and what's for the future? No apologies needed. It's been great to talk to you. What are you doing now, and what's your kind of attitude towards helping and inspiring other people?
If I look too far in the future, as they say, it will cause certainly anxiety. So,
yeah, but just deal with now.
I try to live in certainly the now. What I'm doing now is I'm a yoga instructor. I had taken, like I had mentioned, a 9-month program so that it allowed me time and study groups to sit with other people who understood my condition, to relearn, well, not relearn something, but to learn something new. So if anybody's out there thinking like, oh, absolutely, I can't go back to school, like, I'm not too sure about that. Look into something that can help you work on your time, not so much like somebody else's. Like, because most of the yoga places around here, they're, schooling is like 3 months, and my brain would not be able to comprehend all of that information in just 3 months. I found a 9-month program. It was worth the money. I did it. It was fantastic. So now I'm a yoga instructor. I work at several yoga studios. One of them is I have a class specifically towards meditation for anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and also people who are more because some people tend to be more physically sensitive than emotionally. Actually, those things may tie in closer than they think. So certain types of like touch meditation, I do things like that, and most of the things that I practice, the things that I practice, I teach, and so my focus is mostly on more therapeutic yoga than on power yoga. I had this one person I spoke to once. They said that their son had post concussion syndrome, TBI, and he went and he did hot yoga, and he's never going to do yoga again. And I was like, well, there you go. He did hot yoga. Ridiculous. It's a power yoga. He needs to go back to square one, which is restorative. It's going to be slow, but it's more therapeutic. But anyway, so I'm a yoga instructor. I work at that sip and paint. Like I after 7, like I think it's either 7 or 10 people that I tried to find simple jobs to work. The one that actually focused more on my childhood love for art is the one that accepted me.
That's good.
What I pull back from this is there's going to be things in your life that are going to follow you. And I feel like you should listen to them.
Yeah, you're calling.
Like yoga.
Dharma, your Dharma.
The
Almost.
Dharma, right?
Dharma path.
There's no reason for you not to live your dream. Just because it just may be a different dream.
Yeah, different to what you imagined.
You might not be famous, and you might not be, big with it, or it might not
rich
be the
or wealthy
thing that you envisioned.
No.
But if you keep the focus on, for example, me is art and yoga, I'm doing the things that I love in life.
Yeah, and sometimes you get paid for them as well. To an extent, you get paid for it. So,
throughout all of this, I learned who my friends are. I certainly learned who my friends were.
Yeah.
I made new ones.
Yes.
That's another one, too. I made new ones by following my dream of being a yoga instructor.
Yeah, the right kind of friends,
following my
too.
dream of being an artist.
Yeah.
And then they're the ones who understood more than the ones who had known me for years.
Well, that's yeah. Becoming acquainted with more positive, like-minded people is always
Yeah,
going to be part of the healing journey.
and if they don't and they're not in my life, I've learned to just be like, okay,
Bye.
well, that was a learning
Yeah. Okay.
experience.
Thanks.
And then you end up finding the ones that are like, well, I don't know anything about traumatic brain injury or, post concussion syndrome. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah. That's what you
And
need.
I am very open and verbal about my condition. I tell it to strangers. I don't care. I
No.
make it
No.
a
It's
part
good.
of me teaching my classes at the sip and paints. I mean, yes, yoga. You can
Yeah.
always bring that stuff in yoga, and everybody wants to know about it. But I bring it into my sip and paint classes. Listen, I have traumatic brain injury. I may repeat myself. I may not know how to say the word right the next time that you
Yeah.
say it. So if I don't know how to say the word, you hear me stumbling with the word, just call it out for me.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah.
problem. I'm not going to get offended.
Well, that's awareness, isn't it, for people? It's like basic
It,
awareness, and
but
then they
I
get to know
found the
you.
more that I do that and I talk to people, some people get uncomfortable. That's on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is going to be that one person in the crowd that is going to come up to you and say, I know so and so.
Yeah.
They came back from war, or they got into a car accident, or they had a stroke. Do you know of any doctors? Do you know of any
Yeah.
this or that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Here's a card. Here's what I can give you. Or if I don't know, I'll tell them. Give me your phone number. Sure, I'll try to find as much information as
Yeah. Try
possible.
and pass it
Or
along.
even better, I will give you information on Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. They
Yeah.
are
Where to go? Yeah.
advocates.
Signposting.
They
Yeah.
know doctors.
Mm-hmm.
They will help you any means possible. If I don't have the information, they will.
Yeah, that's truly important as well. Is he's just passing it along, and as well keeping a flow of information, but pointing people to the right kind of places as well.
Yeah, I actually just had a donation class on Brain Injury Alliance at one of the yoga studios that I was there. Another person came back to me. They actually came up to me and said thank you. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking like, thank you for the class. And I was like, oh, no, thank you for coming. And they were like, no. And they were stumbling with their words. And then I
Yeah.
just realized, like, wow,
Yeah. Wow.
this just
Thank you for
happened to
that.
you, didn't it?
Fantastic. Dear.
This just happened to you. And I'm like, so how are you doing?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can help you with?
Reaching out.
Yeah.
Reaching out. That's what it's about, and that's all I try to do, and the rest of us in the group for all these years is just try to reach out and make it a safe space. So yeah, it's rewarding when you do find that somebody you can break down those barriers for them to
But
come and then
I
sit and just chat with you.
Right. And that's what it is. It's about talking. It's
Yeah,
about
conversation.
communicating. I know people that, like I said, like if I hadn't had said anything to the crowd of people, these people would never have come up to me. But they've told me, like, oh no, like they haven't even told their boss that they have this condition.
Yeah,
Or they haven't even told their friends
no, but
about
they
this
they know
condition.
that out of respect you'll have their confidence, and you'll talk to them, in a proper manner. You won't judge them, nothing like that. So that's what people are worried about, right? Sometimes rightly so. Is like being judged or marked out as being different. So yeah,
And
it's an important part.
you feel like you're going crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like especially in the beginning months,
Well,
I've learned to embrace my crazy.
yeah, so I was
So
going to
like
say,
at this,
many of us have stayed crazy all these years, and he actually got even more weird. So that's quite okay.
that's all
It
right.
makes people, it makes people more interesting,
What, the people who are gonna love you, they'll find you.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's my major thing that I'm just gonna walk away from this, saying is be open about your condition, be vocal about it.
yeah,
You're gonna find people who are going to be interested not just in you but also your condition.
yeah.
There's going to be the people that you want to reach out to. You're going to talk about this, and they're going to be uncomfortable. That's not the person to talk to.
No.
It's the next one.
It's the next one. Keep moving along
You
until you
know,
find them.
if you have no one that is by your side, then go to an organization. You will find somebody there, you know, an advocate, somebody who does understand. And from there, go to group therapies. You know, they are out there. Meet people just like you who are feeling just as lonely. Most importantly, do not give up.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I always say to people when they ask down the years, you know, how did you heal? What was the things that, you know, thinking I'll recommend just therapies, medications. But I say the number one thing in my mind is a psychological, like a metaphysical tool, and that's saying, I believe I will recover to the best of my ability. Because when you,
my ability.
Yeah, to the best that I can. I'm never going to be 100%, but I believe I'll recover as much as I can. And if you are interested in EFT, anybody out there, look up a gentleman on YouTube called Brad Yates who does EFT, and he does a lot of very, very wonderful work for people who are chronically ill, and he shows you how to kind of tap places in your body and repeat to yourself that even though, you know, if you don't feel you're ever going to get well, then there's always, you know, and he goes through all the affirmations and things. That's very powerful. So Brad Yates, if you find him. But yeah, belief, certainly for me, was the number one thing. If you're stuck in the system and you're just getting drugs and you're not getting seen, or you're just getting kind of turfed about, then you might not believe that you'll ever recover. But if you can get yourself to the point where even if all the evidence says, oh no, you're not currently recovering, or you're not going anywhere, if you believe that you're going to recover, even straight after a concussion. This is why I was so shocked when you're saying like immediately people going to the emergency room with concussion are being told they've already got post concussion syndrome, because that's a terrible kind of like nocebo kind of effect where they've already been told they've got this illness. And it's that sets it against you.
That was a different story altogether.
Yeah. So, you've got to keep it positive.
They just said concussion.
Yeah, but some people are being told straight away, because we've been finding people come to the groups regularly. I'm like, I had a concussion 4 days ago and I've got post-concussion syndrome. And I'm like, no, you haven't, not yet. And they're like, well, no. Oh, no, but the doctor's told me. Well, actually, you know, you've got to wait a little while, but they're already believing that they've got this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that they won't, individually, they won't go on to develop it, but it's dangerous. So, yeah, you've got to believe that you can get past it, and obviously not in every case. If it's too physical, you're going to always live with some of the symptoms and things, but you've got to believe.
Yeah, there's things that you know, I'm just never going to recover from. But you know, I say that, you know, I have said that about several things, and then every once in a while, there we go. See, stuttering. There we go.
Me too.
Okay, every once in a while, there we go. I think, you know what, I'm going to take a leap and try something different.
Yeah.
You know,
that's important.
and then I'm just going to try this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll find something else, or I'll know that didn't work. I think my dad was the one who adopted that phrase for me. You know, Katie, just try this, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. What's the big deal? But at least you know that it didn't work. Sometimes it's better to know that it didn't work than just to assume that it's not going to work, because it may actually be the thing that works.
Yeah, you need to be very discerning, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. Well, fantastic. Thank you for joining me. You've given so much of your time here, Katie, and thank you for sharing what is a deeply personal journey as well. As I say to everybody, it's just so different for everybody as well. So thank you for giving up your time to do that. And
thank you.
I think we might split this podcast into two and then have it in two halves, because if you like most people will say, well, look, I'd listen to an hour or something, so that'd be great, because then we can kind of have it in like two halves, two themed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Right, just a sec. And so there we go. That was a fantastic interview. As with all good interviews, it goes usually off on a tandem, on a parallel route somewhere. But that was fascinating. I mean, you've got to think about healing in a wider sense, of course, beyond just brain injury. But it's good to have somebody like Katie to come and talk and just kind of show the fighting spirit as well. But as you're talking about people going through depression, loneliness, isolation, these are things that are very real and that aren't properly talked about with brain injury. Everything's kind of hidden on the inside. So yeah, that'd be great, and maybe we'll talk to Katie again in future. So I may just well leave this as one interview because it's instead of splitting it into two. But either way, I hope you enjoy it, and you keep your comments and your messages coming in as well. Thank you for joining us. And again, you can find us on Twitter at Post Concussion is the handle. On Facebook, the Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide groups. And you can contact me, David Bottomley, direct. Or you can also find us on WordPress at WordPress, which is Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide. No, it's not. I beg your pardon. It's Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness UK at .wordpress.com. But if you search for Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide on WordPress, you can also find it that way. So once again, big thank you from me for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.